Northwest Louisiana, with its vibrant cultural heritage and diverse landscapes, provides a captivating backdrop. The land showcases natural beauty from rolling hills and dense pine forests to meandering bayous and waterways. At its heart lies Shreveport, a city nestled along the banks of the Red River, where the essence of the South is woven into the fabric of everyday life. This region beckons with its unique charm and compelling stories of the resilient individuals, including the LGBTQ+ citizens who call Shreveport home. The area's rich history, deeply rooted in conservative Southern values, intermingles with the diverse and visible LGBTQ+ community, creating a cultural mosaic that is both fascinating and complex. Although the environment in Shreveport, Louisiana has not always been accepting and equitable for the LGBTQ+ community, it has nevertheless thrived for many decades. Thanks to the tireless efforts of individuals and organizations, a more inclusive and accepting community has been created over time. The LGBTQ+ community of Shreveport has a rich and complex history, which is illustrated through a selection of personal stories and historical accounts. The journey of coming out and self-discovery often involves finding a community where one can feel accepted and supported.
In telling my coming out story, I remember more vividly when I went into the closet.
My coming out story?
I was never in.
I always knew on some level that I was gay. I did not have a word for it.
Even at 18, I knew there was something special about me, but I didn't really know. I knew there were some things I shouldn't talk about.
I just knew that my friends talked a lot about girls, but I was more interested in boys.
I thought coming out was for people that were just very flamboyant because I didn't understand really what gay was as a young person.
And it wasn't good, but after that, I had to take the fuck you attitude.
I did come out to my best friend and said that I think I'm gay, and he said, no, you're not. You just need to fall in love, marry a woman, have some kids.
I did what everyone else did. You date, you get married, you have kids, and you do that until your life starts to fall apart. And mine did. And hit some really low spots toward the end.
My friend Charles Selber and I went to do an interview with Gwen Campbell on the news where we were talking about instances of teen suicide amongst the LGBT community in rural areas. And the phone rang, and it was my mother calling. She says, I've already called the TV station and they can't do a retraction unless you tell them. She was just panicking that, Southern Baptist Republican woman, her child has just been called a member of Shreveport's gay community on TV. I mustered the courage and drove home, and I went into my mom and I said, Mom, I can't tell them to do a retraction because it's true. And she slapped me, and I fell on the ground, and she said, if you're gonna be gay, you can't live here.
I did what every 18-year-old who needs to know about homosexuality did. I stole a book from the Centenary Library, and I took it home and I hid it where you always hide books and things you don't want found under your mattress. I came home 2 days later and my dad had found it. And there was a note on his stationery that said, from the desk of Reverend Joe Chisholm, I don't have any idea about any of this, but I'm reading and I'm learning, and there's a book about homosexuality and there's a book about our faith in homosexuality. And whenever you're ready to talk, let's talk.
I decided to do that, and I did fall in love with someone, and I did have kids, but the turmoil inside was just it was just tremendous.
In middle school, in the 7th grade, in the lunch line behind someone named Melissa, who was in the 7th grade, but she was filled out. And she had on a pair of ghillie jeans. The coach leaned over and he said, and looked at her butt and raised up and said, "I think we'll call you Gilly." And I leaned over and looked at his butt and I said, "Well, we'll call you, I don't know, Wrangler." And he drew back from me. It was like really clear to me at that moment, like he did something that was okay, but I did something that was not okay. And it was that moment that I've started being careful.
The journey of coming out and self-discovery often involves finding a community where one can feel accepted and supported.
I started going out to our local gay bars as soon as I had a car.
The roles that the gay bars have served in our community, they have been, for a long time, they have been an anchor of the community.
Bars were everything. They were our meeting grounds. They were our church. They were all that.
Where else were you going to meet other gay people? I went to a gay bar July the 4th of 1986. And I've always loved that because it was Independence Day and it was my Independence Day. And I was taken there by a straight high school friend who was dating the mother of a drag queen. So it was quite a complex journey to get me to Bubba's in Bossier.
I was sneaking into the Florentine and into Monty's My Way and these clubs when I was underage. You know, being a Baptist preacher's kid, I couldn't wait to get into a gay bar.
I own 2 bars, the Corner Lounge and Ernie's Bar. I was an engineer in the oil field for Baker Hughes for about 8 years. I had been going to Corner, hanging out, and when oil field dropped in 2015, and they shut down everything, I just bought my first bar.
The other bars in town, the Corner Lounge is one of the oldest gay bars in America. When I was so young going there, I remembered that it was a straight bar during the day, and people would come by after work, straight folks, and had their cocktail hour. But as the cocktail hour disappeared and dwindled away, in came the gay folks.
The Corner Lounge, as we know it now, started sometime in the early 50s, late 40s. So that building has been there since the 20s, and before it was the Corner Lounge, it was a cafe and restaurant. And there used to be, there's a building next door to it that used to be one full building. They decided to split it up, and that's when the Corner Lounge opened. But in 1965, there's a letter that was issued from Barksdale Air Force Base that was telling the bar owner at the time that they could no longer have any of their airmen inside of the bar. If they were to be fined and potentially kicked out of the military because it was a gay bar.
I have a letter from the military from 1965 where Barksdale banned Corner from their soldiers from going there. I have the original letter, so I know it was open before 1965.
I loved going to the Corner Lounge. One of my best friends worked there as a bartender for years. I love that Bevidor, or whatever they call it, the cooler that's still in service. It's amazing.
What I got told is that in the late 40s or early 50s, a train derailed a block down from Corner and it fell off. And they just toted it up the hill and put it in.
The Florentine was an old Victorian mansion on the outskirts of downtown, and it was turned into a nightclub, and it was fabulous back in the disco days. We had a few straight folks attending, but people would come from all over the region. And when I think of the Florentine, I think of that beat, that bass beat of the disco going.
When I had my fake ID, 17, me and my girlfriend would go to the Florentine Club. And it was disco, it was like, 1974? And it was just felt like a new world. It was amazing.
And the other bars that I remember, Monty's My Way, which is where my club was after Monty's My Way, Baja Beach Club.
Then I went to work for Baja Beach Club as a bartender. That when I was going to college to get my degree to work as a case manager. And it was packed every night. There was even a drink named after me, the bad girl, you know. But it was like a place we could call home. And that's what the bar scene was for us.
And there's Central Station, which is inside an old train station. And it's a very large nightclub, discotheque, and that's quite popular.
You know, it's like the ugly duckling who finally found a community of swans and finally realized, this is why I don't fit here, because I've been fitting in here all along. And just, you know, to be surrounded by people that you could just be yourself with and not be afraid of being who you were, not be afraid of telling your truth. It's such a freedom.
So the bars have been a gathering place for our community, a place where we could feel safe, network with each other, and it was our haven. It was everything to us in the early days.
The nightclubs and bars were not only places for socializing, but also for self-expression.
Our bars, of course, provided entertainment in the form of drag shows. Drag queens have been my heroes because before there were AIDS activists or gay activists, there were drag queens, and those were the folks who put their faces out there, and ultimately, because of Stonewall, we started the gay liberation movement.
Grandma Porky was a legend in the community and had far reaches even to Las Vegas. So Grandma Porky was someone that I held dear to myself. And she's some of the reasons why we're all here today. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing Grandma Porky's name. Grandma Porky was just known for her outlandish looks and being out there. She was a former Miss Universe, and she had some wild stories. I don't know how wild I can get on this interview. Entertainers in my time got their start because of Grandma Porky, and that's why we all owe our entertainment careers to Grandma Porky.
I loved Grandma Porky because she was a big, beautiful woman to me. And she taught me things about the industry that I never thought that I would have known, or things that I wouldn't have seen.
In my mind, she's not gone. We would always talk every day, and she would always tell me about past experiences and past legends, and her two daughters that she had. She was like a mother to me. She basically showed me the ropes of being an entertainer and basically showed me the ropes of being an MC.
Drag queens were an integral part of my life and my children's life. While I was at school and I needed babysitters, drag queens babysitted my kids, and they would be able to get into their makeup box and play and come down the staircase in boas and just have a lot of fun. And they loved who I picked as their babysitters, and it was the drag queens that took care of my babies. And look how great my kids are. I mean, come on, you know.
When I was in my early 20s, I was scared of drag. I thought that drag was messy. I thought it was scary. I didn't understand it. It kind of felt like a stereotype to me. I didn't want to surround myself with those types of people. I just didn't want to be a part of that. And over time, I started looking at it from a creative lens. And I started looking at it from, look at this beauty, look at the time that it takes, look at the incredible nature of putting this entire piece together to make this final product. And something over time just really clicked with me in wanting to make sure that drag became more inclusive, especially here.
I always say that Serena and Donnie are two different people, and my husband even says the same thing, but we're one person in the same.
Because you step out on a stage with hundreds of unfamiliar faces, unforgiving faces. People are going to look at you and laugh. People are going to say different things. If you're not doing a song they like, or you have a color on they like, they don't have something to say.
We're very polished if you look at it. Not to downgrade anybody, because all drag is valid in my book. But when you go to other cities, we're very polished compared to other cities. But that's not to demean anybody else's drag, but we've taken drag and we've helped everybody out like a family. So I think that's what's given us a benefit and an advantage from other cities, is because we're kind of like a family niche. I would say drag has given some people a home in the equality movement, because some people don't have homes and some people don't have jobs, and the drag has actually given them a home, has given them a job and a way to make ends meet. So sometimes the people that are looking to get into entertainment, as we did, it was a hobby, but nowadays some people look at it as an actual job. So this has given some people in the community a way of making a living. I believe drag is the glue of the community. It's something that can always be changed and molded into whatever we need it to be. And it's forever changing with the times, and it's something that it gives us life, and it's something that we can look forward to, and it brings us up in the times that we are down, and it gives us strength when we are low.
You know, you have representation from the Asian community, representation from the Black community, representation from our Hispanic community, and they all have different ways they do drag. And I think that that's beautiful. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Trust me, it takes a lot of balls to get in heels and tuck it back too. So we're part of this community, whether you like it or not.
In 1986, a small group of professional gay men in Shreveport organized and brought modern-day Mardi Gras to North Louisiana.
The Mystic Crew of Apollo was the first modern-day Mardi Gras crew in Shreveport, or in North Louisiana for that matter. It was one of the first times that gay folks got together in an organized manner, and that was the Mystic Crew of Apollo.
Our popularity just soared, and if you didn't become a member, you certainly want to be on the original guest list, and after that, you certainly want to be sure that you got a ticket to support the gay community. By that time, we were really popular among the gay community, and they were very supportive of us. And that was also the reason why we wanted to keep it within the gay community and not have us out compared to the straight crew.
And we got more respect through that.
Yes.
And through our businesses and our affiliation with the public.
The balls were held at the Municipal Auditorium, which is a really historic building in Shreveport, Louisiana. And each member of the crew had their own tables assigned that their guests sat at, but they were in charge of decorating each table, their own table. And you can imagine how elaborate and beautiful these decorations were. They were. Fabulous.
Question came up about, who's the queen? Mr. So-and-so. A man? Yes, because we are a gay crew and our royalty both are male. At the ball itself, all guests and participants wear a mask. So that's where the mystic part comes in. It's a mystery as who's under the mask.
We didn't want our identities known publicly because a lot of us were professional persons who worked for the public. And we did not want our professional careers to be also involved in our participation in the Mystic Crew of Apollo. So we wanted to be anonymous. I was a public school teacher, and that would be, at that time, that would be sort of like detrimental to me to be involved in an organized gay organization and then also still teaching in the public school system in Shreveport.
It did pave the way for a lot of changes because we got more acceptance as normal people and as professional people and as responsible people. And I think it helped our population a lot.
I just want to say, through all the years of Apollo, I was the best looking queen.
Some members of the Shreveport LGBTQ+ community still experience judgment, discrimination, and even violence. Despite this rejection, some seek support and acceptance through their faith.
People that literally I had led to Christ wouldn't talk to me anymore. People that I had been traveling with, singing with, been in revival committees and ministry with, no longer would speak to me. I was in a small town.
But we have strong relationships with God, and trying to find a home church was difficult. We would, if we went to a church that was predominantly African American, it's kind of like you can be here, but you can't bring your whole self here. You can be here as individuals and you can sit and listen, but we don't want to hear anything from you. Certainly don't indicate that you're gay in any way.
Gays in the South are conflicted because a lot of them grew up in the church and grew up going to church sermons where they basically said that HIV and AIDS was God's punishment to gay people.
The church I was raised in, First United Methodist Church, has gone through a period of discernment and just a few weeks ago voted to disaffiliate. And one of the reasons they've done that is because of gay marriage and gay clergy potentially being included in a church. And that is irritating because my marriage is as solid as anybody else's, straight or gay. It needs to be respected. And now I know where I stand with them. So I'll find another place.
I remember being in the choir when I was in high school at church, and the choir director before choir rehearsals would do a little devotional, and with some regularity he would do it on being gay being a sin, and look straight at me and my girlfriend. I mean, he would preach at us.
Religion is basically something that enables Republicans to have power because they still do the same old things over and over again. Anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-women, the list goes on. And a lot of this comes out of religion. And it's time for people to wake up.
The whole reason that people in this community feel the need to be closeted is because of the sort of really the Southern Baptist. There are other religions as well, but the Southern Baptists seem to be the ones that are the most against us. When you look at, that's Dodie Horton's religion and all of these other anti-gay legislators, they all seem to be Baptists when you look at it.
The Southern Baptist Church, it made it very difficult, and I found it to be, I didn't have the words at that time, but now I know that it was a hate-filled approach to the message of Christ.
We were deeply involved in church, had been all my life. My two sons were still in church. Family members that wouldn't understand, didn't understand. Tried to keep all that to a minimum. So as soon as I came out, I left the area. Again, to try and keep gossip to a minimum, trying to keep any backlash to my immediate family as low to non-existent as I possibly could. You know, over time that word gets around, gossip spreads, and it is what it is, but I wasn't there to fuel any fires. There wasn't one phone call, no one reached out. David, where are you? How are you doing? Just wanted to say hi, miss you, whatever. You know, it was crickets for years.
Once I knew what gay was, I knew that was certainly something that I was right in the midst of at a young age of about 16. But I had such a love for God, and growing up in the church, I loved everything about church. I even loved going knocking on people's doors and inviting them to come to church when all my other friends were like, oh, I hate to go do that. And I was like, no, it's fun, come on. I loved all aspects of it. And then when I was 16 and realized that these good old Southern preachers that were condemning gay people to hell were talking to me, I was just devastated. And so I thought, okay, I'd rather be dead than, you know, displease God in any way. And fortunately, my brother came out and caught me right before I slit my wrist. And at that moment, it was as if everything in me shifted. I distinctly remember having this peace come over me and God saying, I love you just the way you are.
It is not a Christian value to, you know, discriminate against people and close people off. That's like the opposite of what Jesus taught.
All the things that were supported by the Bible, like slavery, and you know, couldn't be an interracial couple, and then you couldn't love same-sex people. The Bible, in different interpretations, has, you know, supported all those things, but time showed us that interpretation was wrong. And time showed us that it can be looked at in a different way, and it can be seen in a better light.
I remember when I was indoctrinated in the Southern Baptist Church of Minden, and I was told that I would burn in hell. I was a small child, and I was put in a room, which I think was pretty much child abuse. As a small kid, you're in a room at the First Baptist Church, and they're talking about the book of Revelations and all of this really scary stuff. That is brainwashing at a very young age. They feel like we're out trying to convert their children, which we're not. We're just trying to protect the kids that are LGBTQ and the kids who maybe have same-sex parents.
That's why we end up with high suicide rates in LGBTQ plus people. It's because it devastates them. And so community churches like this are a ray of hope. It's literally why we call ourselves Christ Church of Hope, because I believe hope can conquer anything.
The impact of the HIV/AIDS epidemic on the Shreveport community was devastating. Activists and organizations fought and continue to fight against the stigma and discrimination faced by those affected by the disease.
At that time, you know, AIDS needed some kind of support. AIDS organizations needed support.
I was diagnosed with HIV in 1985, and at that time, it was a death sentence. I had 3 different doctors tell me that I had 6 months to live. I did not want my family to be ostracized because of my illness. At that time, people would literally back away from you, and they didn't know how it was spread at the time, so people were scared. And because of that, I moved up to New York when I was offered a job managing a nightclub in Manhattan. And in that way, I could protect my family, but yet be at the epicenter of AIDS and AIDS research at the time. And eventually, I came back home to die. I want to go back home to Shreveport and be close to my family. And as it's turned out, all these years later, 40 years later, I have been caregiver for my mother and father and brother who have passed. And It's funny how life works out. My parents, of course, were devastated that I was terminally ill. In fact, my mother was extremely active in a group that formed with Mrs. Selber, Chuck Selber's mother, called Mothers of AIDS Patients, MAP. And those mothers gathered once a week and were just supportive of each other. And you have to remember, it was a death sentence. People, once they learned they had AIDS, lived oftentimes a week, a month, 2 months. So it was a scary time. There was a lot of fear at the beginning, and rightly so, because we didn't know how the disease was transmitted in the very early days. But then our medical community should have been better educated, because even in the early 90s, they were dressing down in hazmat suits, totally covered in plastic before they would enter a room with somebody with HIV or AIDS. AIDS patients' food, their food trays were slid across the floor from the door, hospital room door, to their beds. And of course, they were in no shape. So at one point, there were food trays just lined up around the hospital beds. And of course, the patient hadn't eaten. So it was,
The Philadelphia Center was established in 1990 by the collaborative efforts of local physician Marcus Spurlock and impassioned AIDS activists from ACT UP Shreveport. The center was born from their collective frustration with the government's apathy towards the AIDS pandemic. Additionally, the center provides hope, advocacy, and educational programs ensuring inclusivity in its outreach efforts to serve the community.
I think the mission is to provide, obviously, education, testing, and treatment for HIV. You're not only attempting to help people who have been affected, and that whether they be family members or the actual infected person himself, but you're also seeking to educate and to minimize infection as best you can.
My role in the community moving forward is working at the Philadelphia Center, which is Northwest Louisiana's HIV Resource Center, and advocating on behalf of our people that are living with HIV. And 50% of our clients that are living with HIV that we serve are of the LGBTQ community.
The gay community was the strength, the backbone of the development of the Philadelphia Center. They kind of began operation around 1990, and it was an effort by the local community to respond to the AIDS epidemic that was then developing.
They're going to funerals every single day, and that was devastating for them because they did not want any more of their brothers to die, or their partners or friends or what have you. It was devastating.
I mean, at that point in time, there was nothing. There were no organizations. There was nothing unless you set it up. And a bunch of well-meaning people set it up is what it comes down to.
You know, we're very, very open as far as sexual health and making sure that we go out to the community to teach, you know, safe sex and, you know, doing the demonstrations and providing female condoms and dental dams and everything that you would need in order to be safe.
Founded in 1973, PFLAG is the nation's largest organization dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQ+ people and those who love them.
What you want is PFLAG, Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. PFLAG began in New York City with a mama who was just ticked off, and she walked in the Gay Pride Parade with her son, and a sign that said something on the order of, "I love my gay son." People still reject their offspring, and that's beyond me. I think smart people are more accepting, don't you? Is that a bad thing to say? If it is, edit it out. I don't want to be bigoted. We had a mom come in one Saturday who just couldn't stop crying. This was a lady of color, and her son was something like 35 or 38 or something, and had only just let her know that he's gay. Her pastor didn't approve of this. We had two young men who had come to PFLAG just to tell us about a play they were in. They were also people of color, and they talked with this lady in a way that worked. And she realized that her son is the same lovely person he's been all his life. And she's just as crazy about him as she ever was, with good reason. And she left smiling. She was a happy person. That, I think, was the most fabulous conversion I've seen at a PFLAG meeting. Anytime people stand together, we stand stronger. And when we talk, then we carry what we heard to somebody else. So yeah, I think as a national movement, I think it's been really important.
Established in 1952, OUTnorhLa was one of the earliest gay rights organizations in the U.S. It aimed to unify the LGBTQ+ community and promote social change, which exclusively focused on homosexuality and related issues. On an early cover, the magazine featured Bossier City, Louisiana native Billy Glover. In 1965, a division led to the formation of two factions, OUTnorhLa and the Tangent Group. Billy Glover played a significant role in the founding of the Tangent Group in Los Angeles, which established the Homosexual Information Center in 1968 as a vital resource for the LGBTQ+ community. In his later years, Billy Glover ran the Homosexual Information Center from his home in Bossier City, Louisiana. Today, the archives of California State University preserve the records and legacy of Billy Glover and the center, upholding the early history of LGBTQ+ activism and advocacy in America. As the Northwest Louisiana LGBTQ+ community grew and evolved, new organizations emerged to meet its changing needs. PACE, People Acting for Change and Equality, has been a dynamic force bolstering the Shreveport community.
PACE stands for People Acting for Change and Equality, and it is an advocacy group that comes together to advocate for the equality of the LGBTQ community.
I never considered myself an activist, and I was surprised how I took to it. But I think it's because my whole life, I've always valued fairness, I valued logic, and I love my family. Bobby and I love our son. He is our heart. We love him so much. Shreveport, I thought, was very don't ask, don't tell. And I mean, if I, as the parent now of a gay child, couldn't think of other parents who were out, I mean, the saying is, when the child comes out of the closet, the parents go in. You know, initially, the first thing I thought about was the discrimination, right? Discrimination, shaming, persecution. And that's because there weren't any kind of laws that protected LGBT people like there were for other marginalized groups. Why is that the case? Why can that happen? And it's because of lack of visibility. So we started laying the groundwork at the end of 2004 for a local group that became known as PACE.
Louisiana had a very strong effort to amend our state constitution to define marriage as between a man and a woman.
I grew up never thinking I was going to get married, because married isn't something that gay people got to do. If we're ever going to be equal citizens in this country, we need it. You take it for granted all the rights that being married gives you. It is that legally binding agreement that has all of those benefits with it that help establish equality. You know, if the family is the structure of society, then these efforts are harming families, and therefore they are harming us all on a greater level.
When that amendment was approved, we had a group from New Orleans come up to Shreveport, and they met with several of us and asked us to help them start a grassroots movement to start turning the tide and bringing equality for the LGBTQ plus community. And the result of that meeting was the establishment of PACE.
As a queer person, as a non-binary person, as someone who is already different, to make sure that there are other people who are like-minded, like myself, who feel as if that they have a place to participate and hold space and feel good about themselves.
The progression of going from not really being able to find a gay community to now where they're, you know, where we feel like we're part of a community. I think a big part of that is the events and activities and the lobbying, even politically, that PACE has done.
The LGBT community today in Shreveport, they're not rejecting our activism, they're embracing us, and we're all doing it together. So we're much more organized and our numbers are greater.
I do have to give a lot of thanks to PACE because that was really sort of my first foray into queer events, pride events in particular. They gave me a lot of energy and confidence to try something of my own.
It has been the catalyst for a lot of the change that has happened in our area. I think that PACE has done a beautiful job of bringing our city forward, and it didn't happen easily.
Mayor Cedric Glover, our first black mayor, was elected, and we established a good relationship with him there, and that led to us working with him. He issued an executive order in 2009 that provided non-discrimination protections and employment for City of Shreveport workers. That led to the City Council passing a matching resolution that protected LGBT city workers. And then later, we were able to work with city and business leaders and politicians to get the Shreveport City Council to pass the Shreveport Fairness Ordinance. That extended non-discrimination and employment protections, public accommodations, housing protections for the whole LGBT community. That passed the Shreveport City Council.
People would never have thought that Shreveport would have adopted such a liberal policy about non-discrimination for city employees. That work was the responsibility of a lot of people, and it was a lot of people that worked together and bonded a central focus, and that was to see that discrimination is eliminated.
To attract people to come here, they would say, we have a fairness ordinance here. That was very unusual for the South. The way LGBT people are treated is kind of the canary in the coal mine for a lot of people. And so they realized that if Shreveport is going to move forward, they're going to have to change a lot of their attitudes.
And we also have PACE, which is, you know, PACE plus the Y. That is geared towards the younger generation of the LGBTQ community.
I believe it was in 2015, we had a parent that had, parent and child that had moved to the area, and their child was being bullied in high school. And so they approached PACE to see if there was some type of organization that was local for young adults. And at the time, there wasn't anything. I have some experience with this. If you would like me to become a part of it, that's what I can do. We noticed through the years, we were serving more and more for the transgender community because the gay and lesbian identifying young adults kind of felt a little bit more accepted, had a little bit more going on at the school, not as much issues, still had issues from our geographic area, but not as much. So we really became a safe space for the individuals that were non-binary or identified as transgender. When they said, is there a way we can start this support group for young adults? And I just automatically said yes, without really honestly thinking about what is that going to entail as far as time and energy. It was very fulfilling to me. I learned a lot from the young people. I know what it was like when I was growing up and what I had to deal with, but to listen to them, just provide that safe space where they could come in and be this complete, noisy, out of control group of humans because they let their guard down. They weren't expending all that energy to protect themselves, to hide themselves, to put a shell on themselves. They just relaxed, would breathe, and it's like, this is who we are and we're okay. And the fact that we were able to do that in the creation of Pacey and to provide that for these young people, I think that's one of the best things.
I'm also a member of a group called Free Mom Hugs. Saw it on TV and I'm like, oh, I want to be a part of that. Got on their website where they didn't have anything in my area. They had a chapter in Baton Rouge, but they hadn't everything in North Louisiana. So I called the girl in Baton Rouge. We got together and I became a co-leader for Louisiana for the Northern Louisiana area, and basically give hugs to kids that don't get a lot of support from their parents at home. We also offered high fives and fist bumps because not everybody likes a hug, but I've had so much makeup on my shoulders and tears, and it makes it so worth it, knowing how it can affect someone else and bring them some comfort when they don't have it.
The Shreveport LGBTQ+ community is a rich and diverse tapestry comprised of individuals from all walks of life with varied identities and experiences. These individuals make up this vibrant and resilient community of Northwest Louisiana.
Everyone should have the ability to be who they want to be, whether you're male, whether you're female, whether you're non-binary. But I think that there should be an option for people like that to feel included.
Looking at the queer community now and the way people identify under the LGBTQAI, and I'm going to add Two-Spirit to the end of that, I think what it comes down to, we've heard some parents and some faculty with schools and others arguing that it's a fad, it's a phase or whatever. I mean, historically, if we look back, to ancient times, literature that mentions individuals that would express themselves in a non-binary fashion. We have been here throughout history, but I think now it's that awareness, it's that openness to come forward, where we were showing some progress and we were becoming more inclusive and more accepted. And I do not like the word tolerated because that's completely different, but let's say more accepted.
Being non-binary does not mean looking androgynous. It doesn't mean that you have to look a certain way. It's about how you are interpreted by other people. It is about this person, this human being, and I don't want to be looked at as a male and I don't want to be looked at as a female. I just want to be looked at as a person.
I don't know if the word trans will go away. I do think it's helpful to kind of have that identifying aspect. I'm a guy, I'm a man, and I'm also trans. But with with so many, there's not just two genders, right? Everything is fluid, and some people are both, some people are neither, and so I don't necessarily see the word trans going away, but it'd be great for, just we're all people.
I think we've all seen in the past few years that upswing of the legislation that we're seeing against the LGBTQAI community. We've always been targeted
certain groups like to marginalize the other, someone that's not like them, and I think we're seeing an upswing in that, unfortunately. So it's even more critical now that we have those support services available for young adults, and young adults up into 20s, 30s, 40s, you know, we need to come together as a community.
Oof. They're getting rough to, you know, keep watching the news and seeing how many bills are actually being, you know, put up and actually passing. And I know that there's a few in Louisiana that, you know, I don't know if they've already voted on or about to vote on that are, you know, I don't think necessarily they're still bad, but I don't think they're hopefully not as restrictive and as terrible as some of the other bills that we've seen across the country. And but it's probably just the start in Louisiana. They're probably just seeing what they can do right now. And I think if these bills pass, then it's, you know, the floodgates are going to open to try and pass so many more restrictive bills. It's terrible.
Most all of these laws at the end of the day are an attack against trans people. They feel threatened by transgender people, and it's absolutely disgusting. The drag ban that's taking place in Tennessee right now really comes down to making sure that trans people are not in the face of children. That's what it really comes down to. But disguising it through drag and saying, oh, well, we can't have these types of people dressing up as the opposite gender to perform in front of these public spaces. Well, what happens in theater programs? What happens in these comedy routines, these national acts that are traveling through where there are various genders playing other genders? They no longer can do that because those are all open to all ages. It just doesn't make sense to me.
One day I opened up the obituaries, and there was a picture of Jock McKinney. And I knew Jock from Central Station. And it just had a picture of him and that he had died. And I thought, oh my goodness, I such a nice man. And I knew him as Mrs. Val, because that was, I guess, his alter ego, or who he was when he wanted to be more. And so I started researching it. And I found out that he had died. They'd found him on the side of the road, and naked, beaten, and that despite his family saying, we think it was a hate crime because they didn't like people like him in our neighborhood, they just reported that he had, you know, probably gotten robbed and died, and that was it. And that was in 2013. And I thought, no, that someone can't die like that in my community. Blocks from where I was working, you know, in a city where I live, and no one say anything. And it happened 2 more times that year, to Terry Goldstein and to Freddie Henderson. And I thought, no, no, no. But then in 2014, a trans black woman that I'd met named Melanie Rose, 18 years old, gorgeous, lived out of town, was a friend of a friend of a friend. And I get a phone call from her friend that says that Melanie, on the verge of her 19th birthday, had committed suicide because she couldn't imagine living in a world where they would accept her. And then in 2018, Vontasia Bell happened. August 30th at 4 a.m., an 18-year-old black trans woman was murdered and left on the side of the road here in Shreveport. And I don't know why, but I just knew I couldn't let someone die in Shreveport, and nobody cared.
I identify as non-binary. I use they, them pronouns.
Split family, my parents were divorced, so I have technically 2 coming out stories.
So I think my mother always knew I was gay because I would prance around the house in her high heels.
There was one day where, she went in to fix herself a ham sandwich, and, she's getting ready to take the first bite of her sandwich, and I'm like, hey Mom, I have something really important to tell you.
Looking in the mirror and everything like that, I didn't I didn't see myself. I knew something was different. I couldn't put a label on it. I couldn't tell you how. Like, I knew I always wanted to kind of be a boy, but like, that was never an option.
I've had my identity mansplained to me. I've had, someone tell me, oh, you can't be non-binary because you haven't had top surgery, or you don't wear a binder all the time, or you have long hair.
I came out as bisexual in high school. That was kind of taboo in the area that I was from, but it wasn't really a big deal to anyone.
I was in middle school, and I was questioning my gender identity, and I was using they, them pronouns at the time.
We all like hug each other and tell each other we loved him. But mom would like barely talk to me. She would, we would like eat dinner as a family, and then she would quickly eat and get up and get out of the room. So that was very, very difficult.
She found a picture when I was like 16 driving and everything of me and my boyfriend at the time underneath my car. So that's when she was like, oh, this is not a phase, this is real.
When I came out as non-binary, when I finally found that word and realized that was me, I was terrified to come out to people. And so what I did instead is I came out on social media, and I had not even talked to my husband about it. And I just posted it and let whatever happen. So he came home from work that day and he was like, hey, we need to talk about this.
Do you think it's harder for a person of color to come out in the South? When you think back to slavery, the stripping and emasculating of men who are coming over on these ships, cutting of the hair, taking of the wives, the way that people kind of carry that trauma through still to today, a lot of Black families and families of color attribute gayness to whiteness.
A year after I came out to them, my dad actually called me on their anniversary and said, hey, I have a video that I want you to watch. And he said that he was also gonna have my mom watch it. But ever since really that point, she actually started trying to have like a relationship with me again. It has been, not, I won't say smooth sailing since then, but it has definitely been a lot better. Like, mom and I talk frequently. I think it did take her a while, but she was start calling me her son and using male pronouns and Sean, and she would mess up from time to time, but that's to be expected. But yeah, they call me their son. They, my siblings call me their brother. It was really great because when I told my older brother, he was like, oh, like I always wanted a little brother. And I was like, oh, I'm glad I could give that to you,
The emergence of locally produced theater exploring explicitly gay themes traces back to 1974, when Port Players staged playwright Mart Crowley's groundbreaking work, The Boys in the Band. This was followed by Centenary College of Louisiana's powerful productions of plays like Larry Kramer's The Normal Heart in 1987, Martin Sherman's Bent in 1990, and Tony Kushner's Angels in America in 1997. Both Centenary College of Louisiana and the Shreveport Little Theater staged Moises Kaufman's The Laramie Project in 2004 and 2011. Shreveport's live theater scene has played an important role in the region, fostering empathy, education, and diverse experiences. These productions and cross-dressing actors bring deeper understanding, initiate meaningful conversations, and help shape our community's mindset. Fabulous and unique events continue to bring together Shreveport's community for celebration and support. One group that emerged was the Pink Party.
Elks Club in 1994. We were decorating, and of course there was a lot of pink.
Pink balloons, pink everything.
And one of the ladies asked, are y'all having a Mary Kate party?
It was a man.
Oh,
it wasn't a lady,
that's
it was
right.
a man.
And somebody said, oh yeah, there's gonna be some Marys here.
I said, I said, sorta.
He showed up a week early, dressed all in pink. Pink sailor cap, gloves, pink outfit, pink shoes, pink socks. And he went in and there was a wedding reception. Oh, goodness.
And there was probably 100 and something people there, that about 150 maybe.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, we ran out of beer and had to go get some more. Party started growing from there. Every year it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Friends from St. Louis, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, Baton Rouge, Lafayette,
Little Rock.
They would come in for that party, and most of them were sponsors.
And a lot of people would only come to the pink party. I remember one year, one of my friends says, "How did you know to send me an invitation?" Well, I thought he was gay, but he had never really said. And definitely is gay. But I think people would come to that before they'd go to anything else. They weren't going to bars or anything like that.
In total, from 2006 to 2019, we have given away $175,000. We would donate to the Philadelphia Center, PACE. Louisiana Association on Compulsive Gambling became one we would donate to because they had a suicide hotline, and at one year we had 2 deaths in the gay community.
And we invited our friends, gay and straight, family members. It just grew bigger and bigger.
The party really started growing and pushing out, not from the gay and lesbian community, from the straight community. It was a mix of gay and straight. It wasn't all gay.
There were a lot of straight people.
Yeah. The straight people was the crowd that grew for
Towards
us.
the end, it was almost more straight than gay.
The younger crowd is very much more out, and a lot of the older crowd has become more comfortable being out. And they might not be telling people I'm gay, but they're comfortable coming to events that have a mixed crowd.
For us, it was a great event to look forward to. It was fantastic. It was a great party, especially the years, I think, before it got so big.
It got actually too big. But now that we know it could probably be that big, I think we'll be more prepared for it.
Right.
If your event's good, it's going to grow.
Celebrating our diverse community, attending events, and meeting like-minded individuals provide a sense of support and belonging, a safe space for celebration, advocacy, and community building.
But I've always wanted some kind of way to feel like I was giving back to the community. I've always very much had the heart that community is your home, and where I live, I wanted to be a part of what builds that up. It did start very small, and it was almost like a picnic in the park. It was just like when the weather started, it was a springtime event, and so when the weather got good, everybody would meet in the park and just have like a little picnic and casual get together and stuff.
We are extra about everything.
Truly.
Let's just preface this conversation with that. Like, we don't do anything small or half-assed, or like everything has to be grand.
We could totally have a festival in the park in Shreveport. We can do that.
Let's do it.
Let's
right at Betty,
do it.
Virginia. We're so lucky now because Shreveport now has so many gay events. But at the time, it really was the only large-scale gay event that was free, open to the public, and just a place where people could come and be themselves.
Something like Pride in the Park makes it not an adult thing anymore, and that's scary for some people and just completely liberating for others.
I think more than anything what has propelled the movement and the growth in our gay community here is us coming out more. It's like Harvey Milk said back in the 70s, like, the more of us they know and the more of us they love, like, we're gonna change more hearts that way.
We're here, we're in everyone's view.
We're
it's
here,
public.
we're queer, get used to it. That's exactly it.
It is.
Field Gay, which is an adult field day event that is queer specific and ally aligned. Being LGBTQ is more than just about partying and drinking. We have community members here who want to be active, healthy, are looking for ways to connect.
The first Field Gay was 2021. We mimicked it off of Field Day, which, I mean, Field Day was my favorite day of school, period, ever.
All day long, they competed in field day games, like the three-legged race, the pizza box relay,
tug of war,
like all of those things. And we saw like ages from like 4 all the way up to people in their 70s. Like, I mean, that event is an event where truly, like, even if you're not competing, people would come and just spectate and shop the vendors and eat food, and it's just another fun way for our community to be together out in the daylight.
I started Shreveport, which at the time was just called Q-Prom, Shreveport Q-Prom, and it was an organization that was really focused on being more outwardly open about being gay in this area. I was so passionate about the idea that we didn't have to just relegate ourselves to being in the club space, that there are people who have families or who are recovering from addiction. I just needed a space to be seen. You didn't get to go to your prom with a partner of your choosing, maybe in high school, or maybe it was 10, 20 years ago. And we wanted a space that allowed people to meet other people who they could create ideas with to further grow the community here. I could actually live here. The quality of life is here. The potential is here.
The long journey of triumphs and challenges has shaped Shreveport's LGBTQ+ community. A community that celebrates love and the golden rule, not a community of hate, intolerance, and discrimination. Ongoing work is still needed to create a more inclusive and accepting society. As we look to the future of the Shreveport community, we are inspired by the resilience of its members and allies in their ongoing efforts to create a brighter and more equitable future for all.
I hope and pray and am kind of like desperate that in the next 10 years that this will be a community that is thriving and bustling with activity.
The future has got to be a place where we help people speak for themselves. And then when they're speaking, that we actually listen to what they're saying and change our behavior.
One of the things that has surprised me is the development of our community with younger people, and with their excitement and their vision of what's going on. I see our future being very bright and energetic.
There's so much has happened since I was young with the young people now. Like I said, you can go into a group and they will ask you your name and how do you identify, male, female, gender fluid. Those things were never even thought of back then. There weren't even words for those things. So they have a sort of privilege we didn't have, but still, and I'm very proud of them for being loud and proud.
This generation, they have an ideology of wanting to be more respectful of people that don't necessarily look like them, or that they may not see themselves as gay or bisexual or transgender, but they want to respect the rights of their friends to be recognized for who they are.
These young folks coming up, they are creating these wonderful events where not only gay people are invited or welcomed, but their families and people across the city come out and experience these events. So I think it's a new day in Shreveport and in the South.
My advice to the new community is to continue being yourself, continue to love each other and yourself. Keep going, doing what you're doing. Like I said, I'm very proud of them. They have bigger numbers than we did. And with those numbers, you can make real change.
And I really hope that young people today educate themselves about what we've been through and the things that we've accomplished, and have an appreciation for the life that they live now. It wouldn't be that way if it hadn't been for these struggles. And those people that were in ACT UP and put themselves out there, they deserve a lot of credit and a lot of kudos, because they laid down in front of the bulldozer and they absolutely were not afraid.
There are cities like Shreveport that have non-discrimination protections, but they're not blanket-wide protections, so that's still an issue. In over half the states, you can still be fired for being gay. But visibility is what's important. And visibility, and this is really interesting, every year, last year, there were over 300 bills proposed at state legislatures around the country, anti-LGBT. Over 300 legislatures throughout the country.
And when we get to that point here in this area where we want to kind of work in tandem, even if everybody wants to do it immediately, that's when the success happens.
I'm very proud of where the next generation is taken. They're coming out earlier. There's more parents that are supportive and be comfortable being themselves younger. But the kids coming out today, some of them are really just out there with it, and I think it's fantastic.
We've made so many inroads into society and acceptance in society that I think that we're going to just keep on expanding. You mentioned the young people, they're getting a part of that. No longer are they criticized, ostracized. They are being accepted by their peers too.
I think generally speaking, prejudice dies with youth. I think as the younger generations come into power and control, you'll see it diminishing.
I always say that I hope one day Sam and I can just rest and there's not a need for us to put on anything gay anymore. We're just all living together. That's what I hope for this community. I hope that we can all just find this place safe and comforting as home should be.
While thriving in a hostile environment, the younger generation refuses to yield to the oppression of the extreme right. However, sustained efforts are still required to create a society that is more accepting of everyone. This community represents a rich tapestry of identities. Their goal is to establish a world where diversity is celebrated and where their cultural and historical contributions are recognized and valued. By embracing their heritage and celebrating their journey from closet to pride, members of the LGBTQ+ community can find acceptance, inner strength, and pride. Knowledge of their multifaceted history is crucial in tackling social justice issues. Local legends, events, and organizations can enlighten, motivate, and empower both LGBTQ+ individuals and their allies in the ongoing quest for a more inclusive future.
Catch me as I fall, like some cobblestone Montreal. Oh, you know this heart got weathered and gray, so that breathe too much if I ask you to stay. I wanna give you my love, and I hope it's enough. I wanna give you my love, oh, and I hope it's enough. Won't you stay?